Hello everyone, my name is Eminence Cosplays. You guys can just call me M. I'm a beginner cosplayer and I'm hoping to share my journey with all of you. This is going to be my first YouTube video, so bear with me if not everything is perfect, and I'm also voicing this over, so if things don't match up quite right, I apologize in advance. Today we are going to be building Sabito's sword from Demon Slayer, but we're going to be making it out of paper. The materials we're going to be needing are cardboard, cardstock, pencil, clear tape. Duct tape is also optional. We're going to be needing paint, also optional. You guys can use markers or whatever you have at the house. Scissors, box cutter, and hot glue. Box cutter is optional and hot glue is optional. You can vice versa with that. So let's get started. So we're going to fold up hot dog style, and then we're going to fold up again. This is just so that way we can make the sword part. And we're going to be doing this 2 more times, so I'm just going to speed through this real quick, and you guys can feel free to pause at any time. I'm going to be taking my clear tape now and starting to put the pieces together. Alright, so make sure to open both pieces all the way, and then you're going to tape in the middle. And then you're gonna close it up a little bit and you're gonna tape on the outside, which is also going to be the middle later. Then we're just going to repeat the process one more time. Just make sure that you open it all the way up, tape in the middle, and then tape on the outside. Alright, so here I'm showing that there's 2 areas that are just being a menace. So we're going to tape those down as well. Feel free to skip this part if you like. I'm just going to do it as it makes it easier for me. This is 100% up to you guys on how you want to approach this. You can also put hot glue there if you need to, super glue, regular glue, anything that sticks, honestly, whatever you guys have. Alright, so now we're actually going to make the sword shape. So what we're gonna do is make kind of a C almost to make the top of the sword. I'm just gonna speed through this. You guys feel free to pause again anytime. And after this, we're just going to cut that line that we made, and that's going to make our sword top. We are now going to make sure that the side that we cut is facing towards us, so we have the right side when we're drawing on the kanji. I'm going to go a little bit above half and make a marker, just so that way we know where to start, and then a little bit from the bottom, just so that way we know where to stop. And then we're going to go to the top, and we're going to make a little line from the top all the way down to the bottom, just so that way we know where to put our black versus our gray. And I'm just going to speed through this because it can be a little tedious. And then we're going to make sure that it's like that on the other side. I messed up a little bit in this part. I meant to make it a little bit bigger. So when drawing this line, make sure to draw it a little bit bigger. Again, feel free to pause at any time. So now that we finished both sides and we have our little markers, I'm going to start drawing on the kanji, and I'm going to put a little picture so that way you guys can also follow along on the kanji and feel free to pause. I'm going to speed through this because this took over 20 minutes for me. So I have an example that I'm going to show in just a second. This is what it's going to look like just in different colors at the very end. Now we're going to take our duct tape or clear tape and cardstock and make little rolls. I'm using a pencil. You can use your hands. It's totally fine. What's going to happen is that once I'm done with this, I'm going to put tape on it, and we're going to make about 3 more of these, and we're going to attach them all together, and that's what's going to make the inside of the sword sturdy. We're also going to make a second one of these, so in a total we're going to make about 8. I would recommend already having pieces of tape prepped so that way it's easier, because we're going to take the rolls and make a little sturdy beam basically inside. So I made 3 here, but you're really going to want to make 4. And this is one of the beams. We're going to make another one. I know I said 2, but we're just going to make another one as that's what's going to fit in the sword. If by the end of this you feel like there could be another one that fits, by all means, and make 3. But right now we're just going to make 2, and each one's going to have 4. Alright, we're going to be moving on to the cardboard part, which is going to be mostly our handle. So what we're going to do is draw a square at the bottom. I know I'm out of frame here. I'll show you guys in just a second. So we're going to make a square, and then we're going to mark that as the bottom. And then we're going to make 2 rectangles. The part at the bottom is going to be extra. Those are going to be our 2. And now we're going to make 2 big rectangles. Those are going to be our sword guard. That's going to be our sword guard. So now that we have all of that, we can use our box cutter or scissors and cut out those. Just follow the lines. It's totally okay if it's not perfect at all. I messed it up here a little bit and cannot cut straight apparently. So now we're just going to separate that from the bigger piece of cardboard because that is all the cardboard we're going to need. And that bottom piece next to the 2 rectangles is extra, and we are not going to need it, so you can just toss it to the side. The two bigger rectangles are what's going to make our sword guard. Those two smaller rectangles are going to make the bottom and the top of the sword guard. Feel free to bend them so that way it's easier to work with. Here you can just see me making sure that they're both roughly about the same size and both have practically the same thing. I know one's a little janky, but that is totally fine. What I'm doing here is we're going to make the sword guard. So I'll pop up a picture now and show you guys what the sword guard looks like. Now we're just going to cut that out and we'll be set. What I do from here is I trace the one that we just cut onto the other rectangle so that way we can have two, and I just gonna go ahead and cut them out. Please feel free to pause if you need to, and yeah. Now that we have all those pieces, we're going to put them off to the side and we're going to grab our sword because it is painting time. Please put something underneath your sword while painting because it can get very messy because art is messy. Make sure that you have something for water. Local bathroom tap water is totally fine for water, and I'm going to be using a paper plate. And all we need is black, white, and a mixture of gray. So I'm going to have about 50% black and about 50% white to make my gray. It really doesn't matter what color gray it turns out to be as long as it's gray. The extra pieces on the side are going to be gold and maroon as seen above. And we're just going to put them off to the side and we're going to be focusing on our sword for right now. So I'm going to start off with the gray for right now. And I'm just going to follow the line I had made earlier. And just follow that up. I'm going to do it really quick. And I'm making sure to get underneath so that way no white shines through when we close this up. The gray should now be dry, and a good way to do it is just touch it. I have some paint on my hands, but if no paint pulls up, it should be alright. Be careful with the black because sometimes it'll leave little gaps and the white will show through, so just make sure you watch it and go over it with black if that ever happens. Also, do be careful around the kanji because you're going to need the markings that we made earlier so that way you can actually write the kanji. My camera cut out, so there's a lot of black I did off camera. Continue finishing up that black and we'll get to the kanji next because we have to be very careful when it comes to the kanji. I got a smaller brush so that way I could avoid hitting most of the kanji. I still hit some of the kanji. It would probably be easier to have a white chalk marker and a Sharpie for this part, but I didn't have those, so I just went for it. Here I am just doing some touch-ups with the white paint because some of the black paint got onto the kanji. I flipped over to the other side and I'm just going to zoom past this part. I just finished up with the black and I'm going to move on to the gray now. I 100% got distracted, so the pieces from earlier are going to be colored in a dark yellow and a more golden yellow, so that way we can make that golden color, and a pure red and a purple red, so that way we can make that maroon. So now I'm just going to show you the pattern. We're going to make a smaller of this shape and then we're going to draw lines. So now we're just going to copy what we did to the top to the bottom of the guard handle. We're going to make sure those lines kind of match up as I made there. With those both done, we're going to set them off to the side and start painting the gray. I'm just going to speed past this part, but just make sure to paint the gray, and I'm going to do a little bit of touch-ups. And now that the sword is done, we're going to move on, and we're going to paint the other pieces. Like I said, I used the two colors from earlier to make this kind of golden color. And we're just gonna put this golden color on kind of almost every piece so that way everything matches. Now with the two guard pieces, just be careful so that way you can see the pattern that we created underneath. so that way we can add a more darker brown later to make the detail pop. I also double coated these just because cardboard takes up a lot of paint. I used the purple red and the darker yellow to make the contrasting color that allows us to see the pattern. Please feel free to use whatever colors you have. I use the purple red and a pure red and mix those together to create this kind of maroonish color that I'm going to be putting on both. Alright, art is pretty messy, so you're going to want to be careful with this part as any paint on your hands can get on the sword. So you're going to want to wash your hands and make sure they're super clean just to make sure that there's no paint that can possibly get on the tape. The important part here is that we want to leave a gap at the bottom so that way we can put the rods from earlier in. So being careful not to close that off, we're going to take our tape and run it all the way down the sword so that way it gives it a kind of nice and shiny finish at the end. When doing the next part of the tape, you're going to want to wrap around the bottom just so that way it closes up. Also at the top you can cut the tape a little bit just so that way it finishes nicely. Now we're using the last part. I kind of skipped through this part and we're just gonna really close up that edge and finish up with covering all the sides. And at the bottom you can see that there's still a gap and we're gonna put our rods in. I figured out that there would only be able to fit 2. I made 3 on accident, so you can see in the background that there is 3. Now we're going to be moving on to the handle. So grab a piece of cardstock and we're going to fold upwards, and then we're going to fold upwards again, but this time it's not going to be hot dog, it's going to be more hamburger, and that's going to be our handle. So now notice that we're going to have a little bit of excess when we wrap around the handle, so we're going to cut off the excess. I'm going to go pretty fast for these parts, so just bear with me. I take the gold pieces and I fit them around to make the pattern, but also just fit them to size. This is also going to start the pattern for the Sabito handle. So Sabito's handle, I start off with a tiny line at the top, and then I make a triangle, and then I make 2 rhombuses, and then I do 3 big lines, which will have 2 little lines in the middle, and then I do the same pattern as the top, and then I do it on both sides. I'm just going to speed through that though. I take the pieces that I had earlier and I make sure that they fit, and if they don't, I cut them to size. I'm just showing here where the pieces go. The bigger piece that I cut out is going to go on the bottom, and the smaller rectangle that we cut out earlier is going to go on the top. Both pieces of the guard handle are going to go together, and I'm just going to speed through that and show you the last part of the handle that we have to do, which is paint. Now I'm only going to do one side for right now because you have to let it sit and dry. If you do both, that's totally fine. You could just skip past this part and when the other side of the handle comes up. So the hot glue gun is finally hot, and so I'm going to take both pieces and stick them together. You can substitute for tape and stuff like that. But for right now, I'm just going to use hot glue. Just be very careful as hot glue likes to seep out the sides and it can hurt you. Right now we're going to put the golden piece on. So this is going to be the first cardboard piece that we put on. And that's just going to wrap around nicely like that. What's going to happen is that there's going to be a little bit of excess that I'm going to cut off and also a little bit of a gap, so I'm going to put some hot glue. Again, be very careful, it can hurt. What I'm going to do now is a whole bunch of trial and error. You're basically going to make a circle on the guard handle so that way it can fit on the sword. Be very careful, the box cutter is sharp. Also be careful because scissors can hurt you as well. And just trial and error is really what's going to help you here. So just be prepared for that. Now we're just going to hot glue the guard handle onto the sword just to make sure that everything is very solid. Now we're going to put the handle on. I painted the backside very quickly, and now we are going to put the tape on just like we did with the sword. So this is the last part. You're going to want to make sure both the top and the bottom are open, but the side is closed, so that way it can fit through the handle, and just wrap the tape around if there's excess tape on top. What I did here was just add another roll into the handle. I only added one just because the handle was a little flimsy, so adding another one was going to make it more secure. Now things happen very quickly here. I hot glue the sword handle so that way everything is nice and neat, and I make sure that the hot glue doesn't get everywhere. The pencil is to make sure that I don't touch the hot glue because hot glue is hot. Now the bottom looks a little janky, so I do cut off the bottom. Now I'm going to put the second to last gold piece on. Just be careful. Again, hot glue can cause serious burns if you're not careful. Here I'm just going to wrap it around. There's going to be a little bit of excess that I'm going to cut off, and then I'm going to add a little small dollop of hot glue just so that way everything closes up nicely like I did earlier with the first piece. And with that, we are almost done. I'm here just letting it dry just to make sure that, one, we don't burn our hands, but two, that it closes up nicely. And now that that's done, I'm going to put the last piece on. I just used the last of the hot glue I have in there and put the piece on. Now it is hot, so do be careful. I use my desk and just kind of hold it down. And what you're going to do at the very last is cut off the excess, and there you have it. You have made Sabito's paper sword, and it looks phenomenal. So, thank you for being with me through this journey, and I hope to see you again in many more videos in the future. I really do appreciate you, and I hope you all have a good day. And this is kind of just what it looks like. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Goodbye!